Hello everyone. አሁንም በሌላ ፕሮብለም ተመልሻለሁ። በዚህ ፕሮብለም ላይ የምንመለከተው ከቀደም ብለን ካየነው ኮንዘርቬሽን ኦፍ ሊኒየር ሞመንተም ጋር ተመሳሳይ ነው። ሶ ፕሪቪየስሊ ያየነው ፕሮብለም አለ። ምናልባት ያንን ቪዲዮ አይታችሁ ወደዚህ ብትመለሱ ኢንከሬጅ አደርጋችኋለሁ። ሞር ሲምፕለር የሆነ ፕሮብለም አይተናል ከዚህ በፊት አንድ ቪዲዮ ከዚህ ቪዲዮ በፊት የነበረው ማለት ነው። ሶ ወደ ፕሮብለማችን እንቀጥላለን ማለት ነው። So the problem here says a 2 kilogram box of running shoe slides on a horizontal frictionless table and collide with a 1 kilogram box of ballet slippers initially at rest on the edge of the table at a height of 1 meter. The speed of the 2 kilogram box is 3 meters per second just before collision. If the two boxes stuck together because of the packing tapes on their sides, what their kinetic energy just before they strike the floor. So ሁለት ሄር ቦክስ ይኖረናል እነዚህ ሹ ቦክሶች። ሶ አንደኛው at rest ነው here. This block is at rest, but this one moves to the right and it collides with this block and finally they stack together. ወይም በአንድ ላይ ከተጣበቁ በኋላ ምን ያደርጋሉ? They will make a horizontal projectile motion. So the question says what would be their kinetic energy when it reaches to the ground, which is at this point. So we will find the kinetic energy at this point. So ከምንድን ነው የምንጀምረው? ያው ቤዚክስ የሆኑ ነገሮችን ላይ እናደርጋለን። አሁን እዚህ ጋር ኢምፕሊመንት የምናደርጋቸው ሁለት ኮንሰፕቶች ነው። ስፔሲፊካሊ ኮንዘርቬሽን ኦፍ ሊኒየር ሞመንተም ኤንድ ኮንዘርቬሽን ኦፍ ሜካኒካል ኢነርጂ ኦር ቶታል ኢነርጂ። ህንስ ከምን እንጀምራለን? ናው a 2 kilogram block here. Let's say this is M1 of 2 kilogram is actually is moving with the given information of V1 3 meters per second. Of course this mass which is initially at rest መጀመሪያ ላይ የተቀመጠው that velocity M2 is about 1 kg. So what will happen is now the two blocks will attach together after collision or stack together and move and reach at this point finally. So this is the final moment. Now አሁን ምንድነው before collision እና after collision ያለውን situation አንድ የምናደርግበት ኮንዲሽን ይኖረናል። Now what will happen? So during collision momentum is of course conserved. Okay, sorry እዚህ ጋር ስጽፍ momentum is conserved. Now so after the collision just collide ካደረጉ በኋላ they will have a horizontal velocity. Now that velocity, let's say Vx. So this Vx is actually of course the final velocity of the two combined mass. This mass M1, M2 and M1. So what ምንድነው እዚህ ጋር ኮንሲደር ማድረግ ያለብን? We need to find first the final velocity of the blocks just after collision. So ከየት እንነሳለን? Momentum before collision should be equals to momentum after collision. So ከዚህ ምን እናያለን? The mass 1 times the initial velocity of the mass 1 plus m2 times the initial velocity of m2 should be, because two blocks are attached and move together after collision, they will have the same velocity. That should say m1 plus m2 times a common velocity. Now common velocity would be horizontal velocity, a horizontal component for the combined mass. Projectile motion happen በሚያደርግበት ጊዜ it would be a horizontal velocity of a combined mass. So from this thing we will see that the initial velocity of block 2 is 0, hence the initial momentum of block 2 is 0. So the final velocity of the combined mass is simply m1 divided by m1 plus m2 times the initial velocity of mass 1. Now all informations are given, since m1 is 1 kilogram and m2 is 2 kilogram. This is 1 kg divided by 2 kg plus 1 kg times 3 meter per second. In fact, this will give you here. So here እዚህ ጋር ማስተካከል ያለብን ነገር አለ። this is m2 2 kilogram. So of course this is 3 kilogram, 3 by 3 you would consider, you would get 3 meter per second. So now ምን እናያለን? አሁን ብሎኮቹ አታች ከሆኑ በኋላ they will move in a horizontal direction initially with vx of 2 meter per second. Now ልክ ብሎኩ ግራውንድ ላይ ሲነካ መጀመሪያ ላይ ሲደርስ it will have a velocity of a horizontal component of vx equals 2 meter per second. Since there is no any acceleration in a horizontal direction, projectile motion ላይ አይተናል, the horizontal component of velocity will not be affected. So throughout the trajectory, the horizontal velocity is fixed. That's 2 meters per second. So next ምን እናያለን? እዚህ ጋር ሲደርስ ኦብጀክቱ it will have also the vertical components. This say vy. Now kinetic energy ለማግኘት አትሊስት ምን ማግኘት አለብን? ሁሉንም components of velocity ማግኘት አለብን. Now we need to find vy. ግን እዚህ ጋር መርሳት የሌለብን vy የምናገኘው ከአንድ ነገር ነው. At least we need to know the time at which two blocks reach to the ground. So ground ላይ እስከሚደርሱ ድረስ ሁለቱም ብሎኮች የሚፈጅባቸው ታይም ካልኩሌት ካደረግን በኋላ it will be then simple to find the vertical or the final velocity in the y direction. So the y component ከማስለታችን በፊት here we have found vx. This is one thing. Alright, so next let's find the time reached to the ground, the time take to reach the ground. Now ሁለቱ ብሎኮቹ ከ1 ሜትር ነው, from h equals to 1 meter, they project into some distance. So in fact it would be simple to find the time take to the ground. That's just simply from a kinematics lesson, if you remember. The height in which it covers for free fall motion is simply half times gravitational acceleration times the time squared. This implies the time take to reach the ground would be square root of 2h divided by g. This implies t is simply equals to square root of here 2 times here the mass is 1 meter, the height is 1 meter, is 2 meter divided by, let's take by default g is 10 meter per second squared. 10 meter per second squared. Now you get this thing approximately. Here calculate ያደረኩት results ስላለ you may also check it out. 0.45 of second. You would get this thing with this result. Now ይሄን ካገኘን በኋላ then it would be simple to find the final velocity in the y direction. Since object free fall ላይ ስለሆነ the y component of the velocity is simply minus gravitational acceleration times t. This is the velocity along the y direction, or simply let's say the y component. Let's forget the arrow here. So this is the component. Now what we'll see here, this is simply minus 10 meters per second squared per second squared times 0.45 second, and you get 4.5 meters per second. This is Vy. Now ምን አገኝተናል? ሁለት component of velocity አግኝተናል, the x component and the y component. Here we have found the x component, and finally you have found here the x component አግኝተናል primarily. Now the y component አግኝቷል። So ኦብጀክቱ ልክ ሁለቱም ማሶቹ ግራውንድ ላይ ሲደርሱ እና ሁለት component of velocity ካገኘን, then it would be easy to find the resultant velocity. This is v. Now I have found vx, this is vy. Then the resultant velocity v is simply under radical of vx squared plus vy squared. Energy ስለሆነ ጠየቅ ነው. The question is simply says what's the kinetic energy at the ground. So the kinetic energy is equals to half of the combined mass m1 plus m2, the final velocity squared. Now this is simply half m1 plus m2, the final velocity squared is vx squared plus vy squared. Since we know that the final velocity here is simply the resultant of these two components, now finally you would get approximately the kinetic energy of 7.39 of joule. This should give you the kinetic energy of the combined mass. This is the kinetic energy. So that would be nice. I hope የተወሰነ ኮንሰፕት አግኝታችኋል ብዬ አስባለሁ ከዚህም ፕሮብለም። በበለጠ ደግሞ ሌሎችን ፕሮብለሞች እንጨምራለን። So I will see you on the next time. Bye bye.